Some stories in the NFL are written in such a way that you can't help but wonder if destiny has one final chapter waiting to be told. There's a conversation happening in the shadows of Ford Field right now, something that involves the greatest quarterback in franchise history, something that connects directly to every single piece of this current championship-caliber roster, something so poetic that it almost feels inevitable. Welcome to Lions News Fan Report. I'm your host, and if you're watching this channel, it's because you know this is where you get the updated news and the deepest analysis about our beloved Detroit Lions before anyone else breaks it down. Today, I need to walk you through a scenario that's been quietly gaining momentum among league insiders, a possibility that would bring this franchise full circle in the most incredible way imaginable, a potential move that honors the past while solidifying the future. Stay with me because by the end of this breakdown, you're going to understand why this isn't just wishful thinking from nostalgic fans. This is a legitimate strategic possibility that could redefine what this Lions organization accomplishes over the next 2 seasons. Let me set the stage by taking you back to January 30th, 2021, the day that changed everything for the Detroit Lions franchise. That was the day we traded Matthew Stafford to the Los Angeles Rams in what was arguably the biggest transaction in Lions history. At the time, it felt like the end of an era, like we were closing the book on 12 years of loyalty, toughness, and individual brilliance that unfortunately never translated to playoff success. Stafford wanted a chance to compete for a championship, and honestly, who could blame him after everything he'd given this organization? In return, we received Jared Goff, who the Rams were desperately trying to move, along with first-round picks in 2022 and 2023, plus a third-rounder in 2021. It seems straightforward enough, 2 franchise quarterbacks swapping teams, Detroit getting draft capital to rebuild. But what happened next is what transformed that trade from a significant move into an absolute masterclass in roster construction. Brad Holmes and this Lions management team didn't just pocket those picks and make safe selections. They maneuvered, they traded up, they traded down. They turned those original assets into a cascading series of moves that built the core of what we're watching dominate the NFC right now. That 2021 third-rounder became Ifeatu Melifonwu, who gave us solid contributions before moving on. The 2022 first-rounder, which came from a Rams team that had just won the Super Bowl and was picking 32nd overall, got packaged with other assets to trade up with Minnesota. We moved up 20 spots and selected Jameson Williams at number 12 overall, and in that same deal, we also landed Minnesota's second-round pick that became Josh Paschal. Then came 2023, when the Rams collapsed to 5-12, handing us the 6th overall pick. Holmes moved that pick to Arizona along with a third-rounder, receiving picks 12, 34, and 168. With those selections, we grabbed Jahmyr Gibbs at 12 and Sam Laporta at 34. Think about what I just described for a moment. One trade for Matthew Stafford directly resulted in Jared Goff, Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Sam Laporta becoming Detroit Lions. That's your current starting quarterback, your explosive deep threat receiver, your record-breaking running back who's tied with Barry Sanders for most touchdowns before turning 24, and your Pro Bowl tight end who set the rookie reception record. That's not just good asset management. That's generational-level front-office execution that turned one franchise quarterback, leaving into an entirely new core that's built to win now and for years to come. Goff has been to 4 Pro Bowls and finished 5th in MVP voting last year, while throwing for at least 29 touchdowns in each of his last 3 seasons. Williams just signed an $83 million extension after putting up back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Gibbs is currently 2nd among all running backs with 16 total touchdowns while averaging 134.7 total yards per game. Laporta set records as a rookie and would still be producing if not for the back injury that's kept him out since mid-November. So now that you understand the foundation, now that you see how that original Stafford trade created the infrastructure of this championship contending roster, let me take you to where this story might be heading next. Matthew Stafford is 37 years old, still playing at a high level with the Rams, but he's entering that phase of his career where every season could potentially be his last. He won a Super Bowl. He got that ring that eluded him throughout his Detroit tenure. He cemented his legacy as an elite quarterback who can win when it matters most. But here's the thing about Matthew Stafford that Lions fans know better than anyone. This man bleeds Honolulu blue. He gave everything he had to this city for 12 years. He played through injuries that would have sidelined lesser competitors, and despite the lack of playoff success, he never once blamed the organization or demanded out until that final moment when he privately requested a trade to compete for a championship. The Rams are in an interesting position right now. They're trying to balance competing with an aging roster against the reality that they mortgaged significant draft capital to build that Super Bowl team. Stafford's contract runs through 2027, but everyone in the NFL understands that quarterback situations can change rapidly, especially when you're talking about a player in his late 30s. And here's where the Detroit Lions enter this conversation in a way that makes more strategic sense than you might initially think. Jared Goff has been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, and I'm not suggesting we move on from him as our long-term starter. But imagine having Matthew Stafford as part of this organization in a mentorship capacity, as a veteran presence in the quarterback room, as someone who could provide depth and experience while Goff continues to lead this team toward championships. Or, and this is where it gets really interesting, imagine Stafford returning to Detroit for one final season as a starter if Goff were to suffer an injury or if the Lions wanted to manage his workload differently in the future. The financial mechanics of bringing Stafford back would be complex, but not impossible. It would likely involve the Rams eating significant salary or restructuring his deal, and it would require Stafford genuinely wanting to return to the place where his career began. But think about the narrative, think about the symbolism, think about what it would mean for Matthew Stafford to come back to Detroit and potentially win a championship with a team that was built partially on the foundation of the trade that sent him away. That's the kind of story that transcends sports, that becomes part of NFL folklore, that brings everything full circle in the most satisfying way imaginable. And before you dismiss this as pure fantasy, remember that we've seen veteran quarterbacks return to their original teams before in similar mentor/backup roles. Brett Favre did it, though not with the Packers. We've seen teams bring back beloved veterans to finish their careers where they started. Let me address the practical concerns because I know some of you are thinking this is emotionally driven rather than strategically sound. Having Stafford back, even in a limited capacity, would provide this team with championship-level experience in the most important position on the field. If something were to happen to Goff during a playoff run, having Stafford as your backup instead of a typical second or third string quarterback could be the difference between a deep playoff run and an early exit. His knowledge of this organization, his relationships with people still in the building, his understanding of what it means to be the Lions quarterback, all of that has legitimate value beyond just the sentimental appeal. And let's not forget that Stafford knows how to operate under immense pressure, how to rally a team when things look impossible, how to make throws that keep drives alive when the season is on the line. The timing of this potential move would be critical. It wouldn't make sense right now in the middle of a championship push with Goff playing elite football. But looking ahead to next season or the season after, when Stafford might be considering retirement or looking for that perfect situation to close out his career, that's when this conversation becomes more than just speculation. The Lions would need to carefully manage the messaging to ensure Goff understands he's the unquestioned starter and leader of this team. Stafford would need to be completely comfortable in whatever role is offered, whether that's backup quarterback, mentor, or even a future coaching position. And the Rams would need to be willing to facilitate a move that honors Stafford's legacy, rather than holding him to a contract that no longer serves either party. Here's what makes me genuinely excited about even discussing this possibility. It demonstrates how far the Detroit Lions have come as an organization. We're no longer talking about rebuilding or hoping to be competitive. We're talking about adding a potential Hall of Fame quarterback to an already stacked roster because we're in position to win multiple championships. That's the conversation winning organizations have. That's the kind of strategic thinking that separates contenders from dynasties. And the fact that it would involve Matthew Stafford, the man who endured the lean years and never gave up on this franchise until the very end, that makes it even more special. He helped build this team indirectly through that trade, and now there's a scenario where he could be part of the final push to bring a Lombardi trophy to Detroit. I want to be clear about something before we wrap this analysis up. Jared Goff is our quarterback, full stop. He's earned that role through his performance, his leadership, and his transformation from a player the Rams wanted to dump into a legitimate MVP candidate. Nothing I'm discussing here changes that reality or diminishes what Goff has accomplished in Detroit. This is about exploring a strategic possibility that would add depth and experience to the most important position on the roster while honoring the legacy of the greatest quarterback in franchise history. It's about recognizing the championship teams find creative ways to maximize every advantage, and having Matthew Stafford in some capacity with this organization would be exactly that kind of advantage. The Lions are positioned to compete for championships for the next several years. The core is young, the coaching is excellent, the culture that Dan Campbell has built is championship caliber, and the roster construction is as good as any team in the NFL. Adding Stafford to that mix in the right role at the right time could be the final piece that turns a great team into a dynasty. And imagine what it would mean for him personally to come back to the city that drafted him, to the fans who supported him through everything, to the organization he gave his prime years to, and to potentially win that championship in Honolulu blue that he always wanted but never achieved during his original tenure. That's the kind of ending that sports movies are made about, except this would be real life, happening right here in Detroit. Before I give you my final thoughts, I genuinely need to hear from you, Lions faithful, because this is a conversation that belongs to all of us. Do you think there's any realistic scenario where Matthew Stafford returns to Detroit before he retires? The timing would need to be perfect, the role clearly defined, and all parties aligned. But if executed properly, this could provide the Lions with a unique advantage while honoring the legacy of the greatest quarterback in franchise history. I'm optimistic because this franchise has earned the right to think big and chase greatness. If you want the deepest Lions analysis and the fastest breaking news, you need to subscribe to Lions News Fan Report right now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you never miss an update, and share this video with other Lions fans who want real insight into where this team is headed. This is your home for everything Detroit Lions, and I want you part of this community as we chase that first Super Bowl together. Let's go, Lions!